Hey guys, Captain Mike. Welcome to Whiskey and Literature. This is my May 2024 Bourbon Trail bottle haul. My fourth time going to Kentucky in 2 years, doing tours, tastings, and just buying bottles. Whenever I go to Kentucky, I have a hit list of bottles that I'm looking for specifically, while I'm open to finding new bottles that I didn't know that I needed until I saw them on this shelf. I also have an official budget of $1,000 for bottles. I've gotten between 8 and 11 bottles in my previous trips, and I've always managed to barely stay under that $1,000. Also, there was bottles that I had in my hands at different times of the trip, and I put them back for whatever reason, and I'm going to share a couple of those with you at the end of the video after we do the bottle haul, and also show you my hit list and did I get any of those bottles from that, and was it really a realistic hit list or not. And tonight's drink is Eagle Rare. This is not a bottle from this trip, though it is a bottle from a previous trip to Kentucky. So, it just happened to be, just reached that bottle. So we're going to be drinking that today while we're doing our bottle haul. But let's go ahead and get into it and talk about what the bottles that I got. And I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the bottles that I picked up. Would you have bought these bottles, or would you have passed on these? Or do you have other bottles that you look for? Have you been to Kentucky recently? Are you looking for specific bottles? I'd be interested to know. Let us all know in the comment section below. And as always, at any time in the video, if you like it, if you enjoy it, like it, subscribe to see more of my content. Here we go. First bottle. I always start my trip, my days in Kentucky at Buffalo Trace. It just gets me out of the hotel. Nothing else is open, nothing else to do. Grab a cup of coffee and a banana, go down, get in line, make some friends, get your tater bottle, and then your day really begins. And honestly, I think E.H. Taylor is a solid bottle. It's a small batch. It's 45 bucks. And I'll be happy to drink this any day of the week. So I drove from there down to Woodford Reserve, didn't have anything there. Went around to Bardstown, drove around, didn't see anything at Heaven Hill. Went up to Jim Beam, and I picked up my second bottle, the A. Overholt Rye. And this is, I hope I don't butcher this if you're in the know, it's Monongahela Mash. So Overholt was a Pennsylvania distillery, and they used like a heritage Monongahela rye with a big 80-20 mash bill of rye. So Jim Beam acquired them in 1987 and transitioned their rye to a Kentucky style rye. So it's basically the same mash bill as Knob Creek rye and Jim Beam rye. So last time I went to Kentucky, I bought the old Overholt cast strength rye at the Jim Beam store. And as I was researching that bottle and looking into it, I had read that they were going to come out with the old Pennsylvania rye. So I was looking forward to that. And lo and behold, what did they have on the shelf there at Jim Beam for 45 bucks? A. Overholt Monongahela Mash straight rye whiskey, bottled at 95 proof. It's an 80-20 rye, $85 for these two bottles. I drove up to Louisville, picked up Scott, and we had a tour and tasting at Lux Row. So we drove back down to Bardstown. We stopped at a random liquor store there, and I found a Bardstown Bourbon Company Distillery Series 11. $139.99 for this bottle, which is MSRP. I like everything that I've had from Bardstown Bourbon Company. Really nice bottles, just kind of nice and modern looking, nice and etching, really transparent on exactly what is in the bottle. Not only the mash bills with the ages, but also the proportion of that whiskey in the bottle. So I really appreciate that level of information. I think that's pretty great. So $139.99 puts me at $224.99 for these three bottles of whiskey. So then we drove to Lux Row for the tour and tasting, and I was pretty excited to see on the shelf there, Blood Oath Pact 10. This is a Kentucky straight whiskey finished in Cabernet Franc and Merlot cask. Of course, it is bottled at 98.6 proof. It is, of course, Blood Oath. Get it, right? So if you hadn't made that connection before, you're welcome. So Pact 10, this is from this year, 2024, just released. I passed on this bottle a couple of weeks ago. I saw one here in the Tampa Bay for $1.99, and I was pretty happy to not have picked that up. Though I have seen reports of a couple guys here in the Tampa Bay picking this up for 130 bucks. So even better. But $159.99 puts me at $384.98 for these 4 bottles. So that's how I finished out my Monday. Scott and I woke up on Tuesday. Again, we started our day at Buffalo Trace. It was Weller Special Reserve, so we beat feet out of there, got some breakfast, went to Woodford Reserve for our tour and tasting, and just happened to walk into one of the Woodford Reserve Distillery Series that was just released like 20 minutes before we walked into the distillery there. I've had pretty good luck going to Woodford Reserve and picking up the Distillery Series bottles. It's to the point where I don't even ask what it is. You have Distillery Series bottle? Cool, I'll buy it. And I actually wish I had bought 2, and we hemmed and hawed about it. I've only ever bought 1. If I ever saw the double oak, or if I saw the toasted 4 grain again, I would pick that. I would buy 2 if they would let me. But I paid $64.99 for this toasted bourbon. It is bottled at the usual Woodford Reserve, 90.4 proof. The story on this bottle is that when they double oak their Woodford Reserve bourbon, the second barrel is more deeply toasted than the first one. It is a different barrel. So erroneously, they say the double oaked barrels were delivered to the wrong place, and the workers started first filling those barrels with new make whiskey. And they filled 18 barrels before they realized their mistake. So then they stopped and they were like, oh, what do we do? Of course, they just, closed them up, let them age, and then they released them here as this toasted bourbon. I haven't had a pour of this, but I am pretty excited to get into this bottle. So $64.99 puts me at $449.97 for these 5 bottles. And this is the only bottle that I bought on Tuesday in Kentucky. So we woke up Wednesday, and of course, again, went to Buffalo Trace, and Scott was pretty excited because it was Eagle Rare that day. Now, Scott has had Eagle Rare, but he has never owned a bottle of it. So that was one of Scott's hit list bottles, was to get the Eagle Rare. And so he was pretty excited for 40 bucks. Eagle Rare, it's not necessarily my go-to pour, but I'm never sad when I'm drinking Eagle Rare. I think it is a pretty good product. Always happy, certainly at MSRP, even 40 bucks, right? Same as the E.H. Taylor. It's cheap enough you can give it away to your friends, take it to bottle shares. You don't care if you have that one guy's there who's doing 4-ounce pours. Go ahead, it's Eagle Rare. So that puts me 40 bucks, puts me at $487.97 for the 6 bottles so far. So from, let's see, Buffalo Trace, we had a distillery tour in Jim Beam that morning. But we stopped in Bardstown again on our way to Jim Beam, and went to Bardstown Bourbon Company, actually, and I picked up the Distillery Series number 10 there. Just like the number 11, same thing. Great looking bottle, great looking, all the information there. Everything about it is nice. So now I have at my house 9, 10, 11. Pretty excited to get deeper into these bottles. Of course, I paid $139.99 for this at the distillery, which puts me at $629.96 for the 7 bottles. So from there, we went to Jim Beam, and at Jim Beam, I was super sad because we got there in time. We were going to eat lunch at the kitchen table at Jim Beam, which I really recommend. Man, we've eaten there so many times. I always go there when I go to Kentucky. Everything I've had there has been top notch. Always happy to eat there. But we arrived there, went to the store, and I realized that Fred and Freddie No had been at the store earlier that morning signing new bottles, and I missed those guys. But they had just released the Little Book, Chapter 8, Path Not Taken, 2024. And a heads up, if you're a fan of the Little Book product, I was talking to one of the workers at the Jim Beam store there, and he was mentioning that typically they release them later in the year, and perhaps this one's being released earlier because the rumor is that they're going to do 2 little book releases this year. It is signed by Fred and Freddie No. I think that's pretty great. I was sad to miss those guys, but we ate at the table, then we went and did our tour and tasting. And after the tour and tasting, I was like, hey dude, I want to go back in the store. Because I've had good luck, like going back to the store randomly, and they just had put something on the shelf, Distillery Series, last time I was there. There was nothing other there at the store that I wanted to purchase, but Fred and Freddie No were there again, probably after lunch, and signing bottles. They had already signed this one, so I just shook their hands and said hi. Anyway, so we left there, went to Louisville. We had a tour and tasting at Michter's. I didn't buy anything at Michter's, and but before we went to Michter's, we stopped at Bardstown Bourbon Company in Louisville because Scott, he bought the Amrut finished whiskey. I think it's a single malt. I'm sorry, the Amrut is a single malt from India, so it's a whiskey finished in the Amrut, and he really digged that, and I think it was pretty great, so he bought that bottle. But went over to the Evan Williams Experience. We were looking, just happened, maybe they would have the C9923 there. That was one of Scott's hit list bottles, but they didn't. But while I was there, I saw him selling someone a bottle from underneath the counter there. And I said, hey, I just saw you selling them an Evan Williams 12 year. Can I buy one? And he said, well, sir, did you do our tour? And I said, no. He said, sir, did you do our tour? I said, no, but I've done one at Heaven Hill. He said, sir, have you done our tour? And he had to ask me 5 or 6 times. I am a little slow. And finally I said, yes, I did your tour and I really, really enjoyed it. And he was like, sweet, I can sell you a bottle of the Evan Williams 12 year. I'm a little slow, I know. So this is the Evan Williams Red Label 12 year. I paid $149.99 for this bottle. I'm sorry, back up. Little book. I paid $160 for this bottle, which puts me at $786.96. I paid $149.99 for the Evan Williams, $939.95 now. So with this Evan Williams, I was pretty complete in my purchasing. The next day, I dropped Scott off at the Louisville airport. I drove to Lexington, pretty happy with the bottles that I had at $939.95. There's a little liquor store in Lexington Airport. I've been there quite a few times, never purchased anything there, but I just kind of walked through. It has some nice bottles, but always seriously at airport prices. So I just kind of gander, see what's in there, but not with the intention of actually buying anything. On the back side of their shelf there, they have the non-Kentucky whiskey. And that's right, Captain Mike, no surprise. I picked up a bottle of High West at the store in Kentucky. And it's a High West double rye. And maybe you're saying, Captain, how many double ryes do you have at your house right now? I can't tell you honestly. I do have, when I purchased this bottle, I had 35 bottles of High West at my house, and I had several double ryes. If you ask me, why did I pay $49.99 for this bottle when the MSRP is $37.99, and I can typically find High West double rye in the Bay here for $24, sometimes as low as $19. I'll tell you why. High West opened the doors in 2006 or 7. David Perkins was the founder. They sold the brand to Constellation Brands in 2016 for $160 million. Of course, when they opened the distillery, they didn't really have any whiskey, so they were sourcing the whiskey from Kentucky and from MGP. They still do that to this day, plus a Scotch. They do make their own distillates, but they really relied heavily on the outside sourcing whiskey initially. One of the stock of barrels that they bought was a Barton 16 and 17-year-old whiskey. And if you buy, when that ran out pretty much in 2017. So if you see a High West product and they have the batch number right here on the front, if you see it says 16 or before, possibly even 17, buy that because it has the Barton distillates in it, that older whiskey. This has 2-year-old and 16-year-old whiskey in it. So I'm really excited to get, I really like double rye. I just had some 2024. I was just out in Utah this week and bought a bottle of 2024 double rye. and I think it's a really nice whiskey, and I'm really excited to compare that bottle to my first time having an older double rye. So pretty excited. So $49.99. That puts my grand total for these 10 bottles at $989.94. What are your thoughts? Would you have bought any of these bottles, or any of these bottles you're like, I can't believe you paid that for that bottle? Are you not excited about some of them? Or there's a couple that here that you really wish you had had? I'm pretty excited about everything. You know, the Eagle Rare and E.H. Taylor, you know, I'm happy to have those to add to my collection. Not really excited about them necessarily, but happy to have them. You got just a backup from my backup and my backup. Everything else either kind of adds to my collection. Everything just kind of slots in, and it's really nice. So pretty happy with my pickup, and at $989.94, that's pretty close to $1,000. So as far as the hit list, you know, some of the bottles on there really are just not realistic, like Heaven Hill 23 or the Evan Williams. I mean, I see these on the shelf, but you know, at these stores, but the markup on the secondary market is just incredible. I'm not willing to pay that for those bottles. Even like the Michter's 10-year was on my hit list, and they didn't have any, but I probably wouldn't have dropped that coin on that anyway. Little Book, I was keeping my eye out for that. Blood Oath, that was on my list. Distillery Series, Woodford Distillery Series is always on my list. Evan Williams 12-year was definitely on my list. And the old Overhold, I didn't realize it was going to be out yet. Same with the Little Book, I didn't realize that those were out. I was just going to keep my eye out for those. But hit list items were the Discovery Series, Blood Oath, and the Distillery Series here from Woodford Reserve. So those are definitely bottles that I'm looking at. Okay, there was a couple bottles that I either didn't even bother picking up, or I had in my hand and I put back on the shelf. First of those was the Blanton's, and I know it's a tater bottle. And man, I was exhausted on Thursday and drove right past the exit to Buffalo Trace on my way to the Lexington Airport. Just didn't feel like stopping. I'm down to 3 letters left to have my working my way through Blanton's for the first time. Just, you know, still kind of a noob. So, but I was just exhausted and I just passed it up. Didn't feel like stopping, and so I kind of wish I had stopped now. Certainly I wish I had that bottle perhaps instead of the Eagle Rare or the H. Taylor, just because I helped complete the word Blanton's. If you don't know what I mean, on the Blanton's bottles, on the topper you have the horse, and there's a letter on each one of those toppers, and they can spell the word Blanton's if you like. So that was maybe, I wish I had stopped and picked one of those up. I also had a different High West in my hand very early in the trip, one of the cask collections, and it was an Oloroso sherry finished bourbon. I believe it was bottled at 100 proof, and I just went ahead and just passed on that. Another one that I do really regret was the Booker's. I made a list of what I have, and I didn't trust my list. I really thought when I saw the 2023-2, and it was called Apprentice Batch, I was like, I think I definitely have an Apprentice Batch, so I don't want to buy it. And I had that in my hand, and I went ahead and passed on it. And I really wish I had picked that one up. The only other one was we went to a secondary store, and they had the Woodford Reserve Toasted 4 Grain. Now, I bought that bottle last time I was in Kentucky, and I dropped it and broke it. And I had just 2 or 3 pours out of that, and it was probably the best Woodford Reserve that I've ever had. It was a super great whiskey. And there I'm at the secondary store. He wanted $125 for that bottle. I hemmed and hawed, and we talked him down to $100, but I wanted it at $80. And actually we offered to buy 2 of them for $90, and he wouldn't bite. And so we passed. I kind of wish I bought that bottle, because it was really a great whiskey. If you have an opportunity to have the Woodford Reserve Toasted 4 Grain, I think you should do that. I think it was definitely worth it, and I really wish I had picked it up at $100, but I passed on it, and you know, that's fine. If I ever see another one, I'll pick that up, and I've had some, so cool. Well, guys, what do you think? My hit list, the bottles I passed on. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this bottle haul. But I had a great time. I'd encourage everyone who wants to go to Kentucky to go. It's not only just for whiskey, but it's part of our history. We don't realize how big bourbon and whiskey was in the American history. So But guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it again, subscribe to see more of my content. I do both book and whiskey reviews. But for now, my friends, you know what to do. I hope you're reading something good and drinking something great. Turn to the pages and stay thirsty. Cheers.